Hey everyone, it's me, Matt. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing great, and I hope you're ready to garden with me today because in today's video, I'm going to show you how to repot an orchid plant. So let's get into it. So starting off, here's my orchid plant that we'll be working with today. This is a Dendrobium orchid, and it's about 9 years old, and every year around September, it blooms with the most beautiful purple magenta flowers. They're such gorgeous blooms, and I look forward to them every year. So the last time I repotted this orchid was about 3 years ago. Generally, you want to repot your orchid plants about every 2 years, and the best time to do it is in early spring. You'll know it's time to repot your orchid if the potting medium is broken down or looks soggy, or if the roots are growing out of the container. Another sign is if the plant looks too large or top heavy for its current container. So this plant used to have a much fuller appearance, but you'll notice there's a lot of older dead stems in the center. The only two living stems are really leaning to one side, giving this plant a really awkward appearance. But today's the day that we're going to clean this orchid plant up and give it a new lease on life. So looking at the materials I'll be using for this repotting project, you can see I've got this Miracle-Gro orchid potting mix. This mix is made specifically for a variety of orchids, including Dendrobium orchids. This fast-draining mix feeds for up to 6 months. The coarse blend doesn't retain a lot of moisture, which is crucial for orchid health, and it allows good aeration that helps prevent root rot. I'll definitely make sure to link it in the video description for reference. I've also got a pair of sharp scissors and a knife that I sterilized with 70% isopropyl alcohol. I always sterilize my cutting tools as a preventative measure in order to help stop the spread of disease. Also, if your plant has outgrown its current pot, you'll need a new pot that's one size larger than the current one. For my orchid, I'm going to reuse this pot since there's a lot of dead material that I plan to remove. This pot will be plenty big for the 2 living stems on this orchid plant. So the first step in repotting my orchid is to gently remove it from its container. Since the roots have adhered to the sides of the container, I'm using my knife to carefully loosen and release them. Next, I'm removing all the old potting mix from the root ball, making sure to examine my plant's root system for damaged and unhealthy roots. So coming in for a close-up, healthy roots are firm and greenish-white in color, and unhealthy roots are brownish-black in color and tend to be soft and mushy. So for the next step in the process, I'm using my scissors to remove all the unhealthy roots. I'm going to carefully cut off any damaged or unhealthy roots, being really careful not to remove or damage any of the healthy ones. Once the roots have been cleaned up, I remove the older dead stems. The dead stems are drier and can be cut or broken off pretty easily. Again, I'm making sure not to damage any of the healthy tissue. So now that the roots have been completely cleaned up, we can move on to repotting my orchid. When it comes to repotting, I'm adding a thin layer of the orchid potting mix at the base of my container, and then I'm positioning my orchid in the pot, making sure the roots are spread out evenly. Once I'm happy with the placement, I add additional potting mix around the sides, making sure it's tucked in around all the roots. I also lightly press it down to help secure the plant in place. So since this potting mix is pretty wet, I'm not going to water my orchid in, but if you water yours in, some settling might occur, so definitely make sure to top off the container if the potting mix sinks a little. So there we go, my orchid plant is all repotted. It looks so much better. I'm glad I was able to position it vertically in the container. It's no longer leaning awkwardly to one side. It looks completely refreshed. It's like it's a totally different plant. So now the last step in the process is to move it back to its home on my front porch, and then we'll talk through orchid plant placement and light requirements, watering requirements, and fertilization. So when it comes to placement, Dendrobium orchids like bright indirect sunlight. I keep mine here on my front porch. This porch faces north and gets a lot of indirect light, and since this porch is covered, my orchid is protected from the elements, preventing excessive moisture and leaf burn. When it comes to watering, you definitely want to avoid overwatering. Let the potting mix dry out slightly between watering since too much water can cause fungal issues and root rot. And then when it comes to fertilizing, in addition to the new potting mix that will feed for about 6 months, I also spray my orchid with this Miracle-Gro plant food mist. It's really easy to use. You just spray the leaves and potting mix once a week, but be sure to avoid any blooms if your plant is flowering since the plant food can damage the delicate petals. I'll also be sure to link this plant food mist in the video description for reference. So overall, I'm really excited I was able to tackle this repotting project today. My little orchid looks so much better all potted up in its container. It's now got a fresh start for this upcoming season, and I can't wait for it to bloom again this fall. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found all the information useful. If you haven't already done so, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons so you can hang out with me in future videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.